So now we proceed with the Q&A. Um, our the earlier speaker, Dr. Golam, has already left for an ABB engagement. So we now will entertain questions for Dr. from Bihul. I think there are questions in the chat box.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe call on Dr. Lamberto Pilatan Jr. If you would want to read the question, and this is addressed to Dr. Wanan. Sir, would you want to read the question yourself? Or if you can speak, his question says, Ma'am Wanun Parbibul, as a leader of Climate Watch Thailand and Asia Climate Consortium, what are your 3 best local initiatives in Thailand, which you could share to us so that they could be of help in combating the negative impacts of climate change and help them develop resiliency? So he says, thank you very much. Wanan?
Thank you very much for the question. What we have seen from this women community, they are doing what they call it water bank. So they put the water into the land, into the soil, so that the water could flow under the ground and make the moisture to the soil and to the land. So that is one part that women have already been initiating. And also in terms of the mitigation side as well, it's not about mitigation actually, but it's more on like women on the ground working in the field. They when they want to use water, they have to invest on the water and use water pumping, and that water pumping is using diesel. So what they together as a group do together, they invest on solar panel, so that they don't use diesel for the pumper, for the water pump. So they have been adjusting in terms of like using different sources that have been friendly to the climate as well, rather than using diesel. So they are using solar systems. So what I'm trying to say is these are already implemented on the ground. A number of communities are doing a number of initiatives, but what is lacking is the direct resources, funding to multiply those, or even to provide them with the technological advances, how they can also multiply those, and how they can make more use of those initiatives that they have on their own. I hope. Yes, that's
Thank you very much, Manan. Should you have any other questions, kindly just raise your hand so that you can be acknowledged, or just type them in the chat box. There's a question here from Sir Lamberto Pilatan, and it was addressed also to Dr. Golam Rabani. Even if he has moved to another meeting, I sent him the question and he sent his response. So I'm going to read out both the questions and responses for now. Sir Golam Rabani, how could we avert losses and damages in our physical and human resources utilizing gender-based risk management? Dr. Golam Rabani actually sent this responses for you, Sir Pilatan, and he says, number 1, it is important that we integrate gender aspects in local adaptation policy and programs. Number 2, it is imperative that there are gender disaggregated data in terms of targeting the beneficiaries. Number 3, gender integrated adaptation and resilience solutions must be given attention. And he suggests that there be gender-specific risk identification. So I hope that helps. And later on, when we have the other resource persons, there can also be, we can also add to those questions. And then Dr. Wanan, there's another question for you. Dr. Wanan, are you still there?
Yes, Jessica.
Yeah. So the other question I think is, how do you think the gender approaches that have been developed by the women of Thailand will change the narrative of climate justice in the in Asia, and globally? How do you think will it contribute, to the changing of narrative on climate justice? Dr. Wanan?
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you for the question. I think it's more on looking at the current system that has been rooted with capitalism as well, and also patriarchy. If you are looking at the movements and also those in the government of Thailand, they are more on male and also with a very limited capacity to address the gender issues. And what I can say about this is because when I see a number of proposals or even plans, it lacks kind of the reference to gender or even women or different other groups rather than putting the word like CSOs. So what we think is more on like, how are we challenging that whole system to give the space and also political space to women. And once women are empowered, they can speak on their own and they can challenge that system to make their voices heard. And why do their voice matter? And that is because women have already been engaging in a number of activities apart from their caring work in the household. So I mean, it's really a kind of a challenge, a big challenge for the whole society, even in Thailand, and I guess it's also in Southeast Asia as well, that women would need to reclaim the political space and speak on their own and voice their concerns and propose what they can also change. And yeah, and that has to be recognized at the policy level and in the political forum. I think that would also, we still need to fight more in order to claim those political space, but at least starting from one small group on the local side, it can also be amplified and replicated.
Okay. Kanwanan, we have a colleague, no? James is actually there in Thailand right now, and he wants to raise a thought for the discussion. James?
Sorry, Kap, Kunwanan Kap. For the discussion, I just mentioned how one of the highlights of your presentation for me is on how the grassroots community should no longer be seen as victims. Instead, they are part of the solution because their experiences are valid enough knowledge sources for them to have valid knowledge for climate change and all the solutions to it. And so with the discussion earlier about how people should be empowered, should be their voices should be heard and they should be allowed to participate. Maybe that can be achieved by first recognizing this, that these people are not victims, they are part of the solution, and that they are equally as knowledgeable to us, and these knowledge just has to be like processed with them or unpacked with them in order for them to be really participatory and engaged fully in building resilience in our societies and communities and establishing the procedural justice that was also discussed in the earlier sessions today. So that would be all for me.
Great. Manan, would you want to respond to that? James here, I think raised a valuable point, and he in the chat box, he articulated, a very important proposition that, people in the community should no longer be seen as victims, was as part of the solution. But it's also important that people in the academe recognize this, and we must actually set a limit to how far do we want to represent people from the local communities, so that they can on their own be empowered enough to speak for themselves. How would you respond to that, Wanan?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's totally agree on that. And And from the work that we have done, we totally see that quite clearly. And there are also some parts that we need science and from the academic community as well, in terms of looking at climate projection, the climate change impacts in the future. Those would be something that women on the ground think that they need that kind of knowledge. So it's our part to kind of facilitate the process of learning as well. And then, yeah, they have they have the solutions. They have implemented some of the initiatives on the ground, but with the rising of CO2, those might not be workable in the future. But it has to be a process for them to know about those future impacts, so that they could shape and also to decide what kind of solutions they might want to have in the future. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wanan. And Dr. Wanan will be leaving us for another meeting, but she says that if you type in your questions on the chat box, she may be able to still respond to it. So thank you very much, Dr. Wanan, for Pitbull. And we will.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Wanan.
Before Doc Emma, there's a raised hand. Sorry, I failed to recognize. Is that from Edmer Martinez? Would you want to raise a question before we let Dr. Wanan go? Edmer Martinez, please.
Can you unmute yourself, Edmer?
Edmer.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I cannot show my video, but
Yeah.
Sawadee Kap, Kunwanun, Pomshil, and Merkap. I'm from the Philippines, and I'm very inspired by the initiatives the women themselves did, especially the impact mapping, the body mapping, and the solution mapping that you have done. I would just like to inquire if the group has already looked into the sector of the aging women and the youth, which could be potential champions for the voices, additional voices for climate justice, because as we recognize the limitations of the housewives, which you have presented in your earlier presentation, I think the youth and also the elderly population can also give a nuanced voice or an additional voice in the climate justice project in Thailand. Khop kun kap.
A very short one. Yes, we are we are engaging them at the moment, and if we got some new information and how we engage them, it could also be shared. We are considering that as well. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Wanan. Doc Emma, would you want to say something to Dr. Wanan before she goes?
No, I just want to say that, you know, Dr. Wanan, we really appreciate very much your rich input, the diversity of your perspectives and how it informs us really. So thank you very much. I know you're very busy, but we do appreciate your sharing your valuable time with us. Thank you, Dr. Wanan.
Thank you so much. Sawadee ka.
And I'll turn you over back again to Dr. Tess Tabada for the next set of speakers. Ma'am Tess?